So, the first question is, why are you an artist? As opposed to, how did you get into the field? Jules had suggested this question, so Jules, why don't you lead off? Just
But they
unmute
don't
yourself first.
show anything.
If somebody want to say something, go ahead.
Well, I think it's your question, so can you give us a hint as to why you wanted to, why you got into the world of art?
It's a to me it's a very interesting question,
I
and
can't even see any gallery.
uh, um, and I kind of asking myself a question, and the answers seem to be evolving all the time. The first time I made art, it was actually a form of diversion. By profession, I'm an engineer, and at the time I was studying for the exam in university, and I did everything I could just not to not to actually do what I had to do. You know, I had only 4 days before the exam, so I happened to have a piece of paper, and I had watercolors nearby, and I said, that could be an interesting thing, maybe to spend about an hour or two to relax. Well, I spent about 3 days out of four working on a piece of paper, actually making some kind of a watercolor image. And to my surprise, it's the first time I did it. To my surprise, it actually something came out that was kind of intriguing almost. You know, there was like a real shape, real form. It was quite real. Anyway, so that was my first try. And then later on, moving way forward, I used to live in Florida, and I always was fascinated with metals. You know, I suppose at first it wasn't even a question of art, and I just had a need, like being in engineering, you know, doing projects and being always under pressure. I needed some kind of sort of like a outlet to do something completely different. So that this piece of metal that I had, I started to shape. It was actually I needed for something else. I wanted to build a lamp, you know. And again, so I played with a piece of metal, and again, something came out of it, and it sort of spoke to me, you know. And then I started to draw. It was like a thin metal foil, and I started to draw on it, and some images beginning to come out. And it was like, so wow, this is like a revelation. Whoa, this is really interesting. What is it, you know? And like, I really wasn't thinking about art or anything. I suppose, what is the definition of art? Is anything that you yourself create and call an art? That probably is an art. Anyhow, so I started to kind of doodle around, and some images started to form and coming out and shape in my mind, and then all of a sudden they were on this piece of metal, and so I showed to a friend of mine, and she said, "Wow, that's pretty interesting." Like she had a gallery. She said, "Well, you know, why not? Why not just sharing it with someone?" And so I went to see a lady, and she looked at it. She said, "Well, this is quite nice, but this is really not art. This is craft." And I didn't agree with her because to me it was like really kind of artistic expression. And she said, "Why, why wouldn't you try to paint something like?" And and it was like eureka, you know, wow, this is really amazing because uh, uh, um, I've been always kind of working with the engineering forms, and since childhood I was playing music, and now it's art. So it was kind of interesting to try to unify all this seemed to be, especially engineering part, kind of a different ideas together. And slowly I started to create this thing in my mind. It was extremely exciting just to come up with a concept. It wasn't just a pure reflection of, okay, I see the ocean and I kind of urge to paint an ocean. To me, it was a lot more interesting to kind of combine these images to synthesize them, and it sort of became like almost a need, to come up with the story and reflect that into something real that would materialize over time. And so the evolution of that sort of represented itself in a form of paintings that I started to create in about 82. And later on, it sort of grew to just complete absorption and need to do that. It's almost like a physical need, and there's also fears along with it, like you created this in your mind masterpiece, or the work that you're happy or not happy with, and then the fear is, okay, what's next? How do I do something different? So it's a constant push and pull, to create, and some hesitancy, and so this dynamics of the process, in my mind, is extremely exciting, and I just can't imagine going forward and not doing it, especially now that I'm retired and I have a lot more time to think about it. And of course, the best part of it, participating in the shows and meeting people and talking to people about art or any other subject that comes out of the conversation. So the combination of this private moments and then, being with people and exchange the ideas and talking with everyone and share some thoughts. Like some people see completely different things in the art that I do, and gets me some more ideas. So it's a fascinating process, and uh, um, I feel fortunate that I'm able to do that. So that's just a few thoughts on the subject.
Thank you, Jules. Very insightful. You mentioned one thing that I think plagues artists, and that is you mentioned uh, crafts versus art. I think that crafters can be and are just as much fine artists as fine artists,
I totally
if
agree.
their work is fine, if you know what I mean. But sometimes fine artists are, kind of pure fine artists. Does anyone have a comment about that? It's a tough one, I know.
It's okay.
Um, Remember to, Cheryl, I'll unmute you here. Okay, go ahead. No.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
I just wanted to say that I think of myself as spanning both sides. I think of myself both as being a craftsperson and a fine artist, because I do love working with my hands, as in working with fabric or painting on glass or working with beads. I love that, and I have a lot of fun with that. And I do a lot of crafty things. On the other hand, I also like the fine art aspect. I think it's, my personality covers both sides, where I love the fine art as well. I like the exploring and going deeper into a piece of art or a technique as well. So I think you can be both.
Thanks, Cheryl. I'm going to mute you again. Anna.
Well, I think I completely agree with Cheryl. I think that you can do both. At least I think that sometimes I'm more on the craft side, but majority of time I think I'm more of an artist. However, I think that there would be two extreme ends, but the majority will be probably somewhere on the spectrum, because it is a spectrum. I don't think that many of the cases would be just one of them. I think it's a mix. And I actually really like that, because you can always go in one direction or in the other. So I think being a mix is actually, it's great.
Bill, Jules mentioned that contact with people was very important to him. So I wondered if any of the artists wanted to talk about the impact COVID's had maybe on their work and on the opportunity to meet their clients or talk to people.
Um, Jewel, or sorry, who was going to respond? Who were you asking? Lori?
I can I can talk to that if that's all right.
Caroline wanted to jump in
Sure.
on that.
Okay.
Um, well, it's really a conundrum. I mean, I work in solitude, and with what I do, it's highly focused. I work with magnifiers. I spend many, many hours working on each piece. Each piece takes anywhere from 8 to 25 or 30 hours. So when I when I, for instance, have an open studio show, which I do every year, and I have here in my studio, it's really a time where I find out more about each piece. It it completes things for me, and it's not necessarily that the piece gets purchased, but I get to hear other people's stories about my pieces, which is invaluable to me. And it completes something for me in my understanding of the piece. It can also redefine a piece for me as the artist. So not having access to people to come and look at my work is devastating. It's not only that I like to be patted like a little pet, which of course I do, but it's something more profound. And I think that it's a question of art, like the viewer has enormous impact in each piece of art. And I believe that there's a very singular relationship between art and the viewer. And nothing replaces that. So certainly I will always do what I do because it's my destiny. It's what I'm suited for. It's what I'm best at. But the experience of creating something out of nothing is so much, it's so rich when there is a viewer involved. It makes it an even more profound experience for me as the artist, as the maker.
Thanks, Caroline.
I think we could go on forever on that topic. I'm just going to point out one thing. If you keep your eye on the chat feature, whenever you see a little number come up there, that means somebody has added something new. And sometimes the person just wants to make a brief comment. And so I just encourage you to keep your eye on that so you can just read that little brief comment. So Joel had just a bit ago said labels are so limiting. So just keep your eye on that chat in case because something might catch your eye that you're just going to kind of
Stuff off the stove.
tuck in the back of your mind to think about. And I'm just going to remind everyone to keep their microphones muted. If I see somebody's mic that's not muted, I'll just mute you. It's just there can be feedback and noise of your dog barking or something like that. So Elaine from Arizona at the moment, you said that in your artist statement that at the heart of my work is the pride I take in having developed expertise in a wide range of artistic media. So the question that I have for you and for everyone, of course, is can pride and accomplishment surpass selling your artwork? Or do you, as an artist in general, need to sell in order to feel that same sense of accomplishment?
Well, yes, I feel pride in everything I accomplish, and my body of work ranges over a lot of different areas, from what some people might call craft to some people might call art. But especially with my one item, my personalized baby blankets, I get a huge amount of pleasure in knowing how much people appreciate and enjoy my things. So yes, it is important for people to purchase them. The feedback from people, as the person before me mentioned, is so important. And having people tell me that, you know, they received one of my blankets 30 odd years ago, and now they're parents and they want the same thing for their own children, that it's going to the next generation. Stories like that, that people are still using and enjoying things that I've made 3 decades ago, gives me a tremendous amount of pleasure. So if nobody bought anything, I wouldn't get that, nor would I be able to continue working. So the feedback from people, even about, you know, a challah cover that I painted 20 years ago and that's still being used today, those are the things that, as a maker, and I use the term maker instead of like artist or craftsperson, we're all creative people and we are all making things that we love and that we think are beautiful and people will enjoy. So if we're not selling them and people aren't enjoying them, you know, that cuts into the process quite a bit. Also, as far as making, you know, jewelry and things, I mean, if nobody bought anything that you made, they'd just be, or paintings, there's only so much space in your house that you can store things. And so you really need to sell things to make room for more and to purchase materials to continue to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. Again, that's a very big topic, but um, it brings us to another question, which is very much related. And Caroline had wondered about this before in sending a question to me as that she would like to discuss, and that is about the pandemic. Of course, it may have had some big impact on your ability to sell. But it may also have affected your connection with fellow artists, the public, and the public. And the word that that Caroline uses regarding the absence of direct contact with the public is excruciating. So Caroline, maybe you could spend just a couple of moments to tell us about that.
I do probably 3 shows a year outside my studio, and then I do a large open studio show. During that time, in both the shows and the show open studio show, I connect with everyone because I do put in such long hours by myself. It's like my big social occasion. We eat and drink and natter, and it's quite wonderful. And it shows too, you have time to look at other work, which is incredibly important. And learn how to, you know, being an artist is it's a lifetime of learning how to see. And it takes a very long time. It takes a very long time to recognize the difference between this and that. I know that sounds very simplistic, but basically that's what it is. And so the less work I see, the more impoverished I am. During August, September, October, I was out in my driveway. It was so humiliating, but I needed to show, I needed people to see my work. I needed to get some money if that were possible. It's necessary. So this is quite a difficult situation all around. And I also like the fact, I like being out. I like people happening by and seeing my work. I think, you know, I'm very a la William Morris. I think we should have art in our lives every single day. I think it's really, really important for the spirit. and for our sensuality and for our our celebration of beauty. And when that's happening, or I mean, yes, I can go to a museum and I can go through the galleries online, but it's certainly a lesser sort of experience for me.
You used a very strong word initially, and that was excruciating. And then you used another very strong word, perhaps even stronger. You used the word humiliating.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask if other artists experience, and I'm sure every artist experiences this, where you are in a show, whether it's a solo show or a group show, or in some situation where you're selling your artwork and you don't sell anything, or you sell very, very little, or not enough to make up for your expenses and so on. Do you feel that as humiliating, or is there a more positive way to look at it? Jules has his hand up. Make sure you unmute yourself.
See, I might be in a different situation because I do not depend on art as the prime source of income in terms of sales. But I go to these shows, and I've had a number of shows, and I do not sell a lot. It's probably due to the nature of my art, and I do sell, but really not a lot. And to me, uh, um, sure, like anybody else, it's very human. I'd love to see a lot of my artwork really flying off the easels and walls. But to me, the most important part of the art is not just to sell, even though it is represents the, I suppose, acknowledgement that your work is, people appreciate your work and they're willing to pay for it. To me, the reward is actually in creating art and talking to the people and being at the shows and getting the ideas. And if I sell, it just such an incredible bonus for me. So uh, um, I do get a lot of responses. In fact, when I'm at the show and I see people walking into my space, quite often I kind of amazed just to see the expression on people's faces. They sometimes it's like you're looking at someone who's walking into the area of Alice in Wonderland, like you see all this amazing emotions on people's faces, and the following conversations are very excited about it. But if I did not sell, it's just part of life, kind of get used to it. I'm still going to the shows, and hopefully it would sell. If it's not, I'm still going to be there next time.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that someone else has a very positive outlook on it. Anna, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
So I try to go to some shows. It's not my main source of income, so I'm not trying to sell as much as I can. Although I do agree, I think it was Elaine who said that if you accumulate things, then in the end you will not have space to work and create more because you just don't have enough space. And some of my pieces of, I do call it art, some of my pieces are pretty big. So I am limited in how much I can create without selling or giving them as gifts. So that's one of the parts that are important to me, just because otherwise I won't be able to continue creating. With the shows, I discovered that it really depends on the show, because sometimes I can, after going there, I actually realize that I'm not really fitting into the scope of the show. It happens quite a lot. So then what happens, usually people would come to me and we would talk. And not many people then would buy because it's really not what they expected to have there. But I really like talking, and I think it helps me also see what people see in my things, in my creations. But I realize that if I do want to sell, I have to search more for more matching scopes of the shows.
You I can respond to that with my very famous and not yet patented phrase, which is, you have to be rich to be a starving artist. I want to see laughter or something. This is another topic that really would could carry us for another few hours. Now, you realize that this art show is under the auspices of the Social Action Committee of Temple Anshe Sholom, and which the mandate is for outreach from the Social Action Committee. And it gives Jewish artists an opportunity to connect with one another and a venue to show their work. So the question is, does being a Jewish artist have an influence on your artwork? And I'm not directing that at any specific person. So I ask if anyone has a comment about the fact that you're Jewish and how it contributes to your artwork. You either just unmute yourself and if you have something to say. And I'm looking.
Hi, guys.
Oh.
I was just going to say that because I make functional pieces, number one, I was going to kind of throw that in at the end of the other discussion. I enjoy seeing people use my pottery. So that whether it's been a gift or somebody purchased it, it's just so gratifying to see somebody use it. And so let's get back to the Jewish part. I also enjoy making pieces for holidays because over the years when I was teaching children or for myself now, it's always such a thrill to be able to make something that means something for a Hagim, for the Hagim.
Perhaps I can chime in.
Yeah, please.
The being a Jewish artist, of course, you could draw on the richness of our culture and our religion, and I don't really do that much of a Jewish art, although the Jewish symbology could be seen in some of my paintings. But it was bar mitzvah of my youngest son, Jonathan Weisberg. And I had an idea of kind of commemorating the event and presenting this to the shul. So I designed and I made a piece of brass work. It's like a brass embossing, which was a subject of Johnny's sermon, which essentially represented the fact that if you follow the Jewish laws, the Jewish people will be eventually rewarded. You know, there will be peace, there will be brides. It was in January that there will be brides to celebrate the wonderful events. The enemies of Israel would be smitten, and so I created this piece which sort of represented the some of the aspects of his parasha, and it was really rewarding to actually working on it, and at the end, this piece is now hanging in our shul in the Salel congregation in Mississauga. So every time we walk in there and look at it and say, my goodness, so many years already passed by since Johnny's bar mitzvah, and it just I guess it's part of being a Jewish artist. You know, somehow, somewhere, it will always come out.
Great. Any other comments from all of us who are Jewish artists?
I was going to add, being Jewish is very much part of my identity, as being an artist is part of my identity. And although I don't find it in my painting, it is certainly in my craft work. And I did put up some challah covers that I've done behind me. And then I did a series recently just playing with the word shalom, just using it decoratively. And I belong to the Pomegranate Guild of Judaic Textiles. And it's a nice way of having an avenue to explore my Judaism as well. So I find it lands up in my crafts.
Thank you. Joel, you had something that you wanted to say.
Yeah, there's really nothing inherent Jewish in my artwork. I like doing landscapes and portraiture and things like that. But I did do a really interesting series on some family letters that I discovered once my parents passed away. They were written in Yiddish, and there's 40 letters. I had them translated, and they were nephews and nieces of my grandparents who were just coming out of the Holocaust. They were trying to find themselves, find their family, reach my grandmother up in Sturgeon Falls, Ontario, from Poland, and they were phenomenal letters. And so I did a series of paintings based on one of my grandmother's nephews coming out of there. So, I was able to, connect obviously that part of our family history to my artwork, and that was very rewarding.
Thank you. Fortuné.
Okay, can I talk?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I wanted to say that I've never thought of myself as a Jewish artist. Always been passionate about creating art in many different forms, from working with many different kinds of materials over my life. But I found that with at certain times in my life, whether I was working with fabric or paint and canvas or glass, somehow my Judaism creeps in. It's almost like it's asking to say something. And for example, in my painting, I have a series of paintings about children and their wishes that children have when they're young and innocent. The wish of playing, of rolling on the grass, of flying a kite. I do a lot of those, but somehow the idea of wishing to know who my ancestors were came to me one day. And my wish series is always in silhouette. This time, for whatever reason, I created the same little figures, but they were not in silhouette, they were just in outline. And it was like they were asking me to create them. They were saying, we're reaching out to you, just as I was reaching out to them. I have a very, very small family. And I'm always interested in knowing about my history because it's kind of a little convoluted. I come from Egypt, and there's a lot of history behind me, and but I don't know a lot of it, and I have very few relatives to ask. So it's as if I was reaching out for them to sort of connect with me in some way. And these paintings just sort of appeared. I wasn't even consciously doing them, it seemed like. And then when it came to glass work, I work with, I've been making glass jewelry for many, many years. At one point, I got that same sense of needing to somehow connect my Judaism to my jewelry, which I'd been selling for 10 years and never connected anything to being Jewish. And suddenly, out of nowhere, I don't know where it came from. Well, actually, I do know where. It's this piece that I'm wearing now. someone pointed out to me that the piece that I'm wearing,
We lost you there, Fortuné. Yeah, I don't know what happened, Fortuné. We lost you completely. Why don't you come in here? Yeah, come on in here. Come in here. The battery on our other computer that Fortuné is on just died. So Fortuné is going to come in here and continue. I'll go in there and revive it.
hi, sorry. So someone pointed out that this was the map of Israel. And I said, what? I don't believe you. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it was the map of Israel. That was a completely unconscious creation. I didn't do it consciously, but I really believe that there's something that comes from up above and guides me to create something that has a Jewish connection. Does anybody else get that feeling?
Yes, I understand what you're saying, Fortuné. And I think that as far as being Jewish, I do think it affects things during periods of my life when I felt closer to Judaism. I would make challah covers and kiddush cups and mezuzah covers and things like that. And also, as far as even my baby blankets, the fact that, you know, I offer them in Hebrew text because I feel that connection. And one thing I think is worth saying is that I feel supported by the Jewish community. The fact that we're Jewish, even when I started making blankets 38 years ago, it was my friends and family who were mostly Jewish people who were my first customers. And through them, it grew and grew. And so I'm not saying that Jewish people tend to support Jewish commerce more, but I think there is something to that, like I know now, you know, a huge portion of my customers are Jewish, even though they're not completely. And I think just the fact that the synagogue is sponsoring this art show, it's just a matter of Jewish people supporting other Jewish people, both personally and artistically.
I think this is another topic that could go on for a long time. I'll change courses a little bit. There are two photographers in this show, and one of them is me. The other is Serge. And the question is, do you find that the post-production, in other words, the photoshopping of your work is very important, or do you not Photoshop at all and you prefer the very pure, if I could use that word, result of your photography?
So Photoshop or photo editing software is critically important to my workflow, certainly. Certainly at the onset, when I first decided to do this professionally, I was predominantly a black and white photographer, but I photographed in color. So obviously I needed to change it to black and white, and that's where the photo editing software went. So I've always maintained that I use the software for editing purposes, not for creating the photograph per se. Putting elements in, removing elements, that kind of thing is not my thing. changing a sky. That's not my thing. I actually spend an awful lot of time seeking out the scenery as I would like it to show. So, if I go to the lake for a sunset, if there's no clouds, I can't be bothered. I just pack up and I go home. So again, as an editing tool, absolutely. The contrast, the saturation, anything that can be changed to bring out the detail, that's where the software, that's why I use the software. But for creating or for other things specifically to photography, no, that doesn't interest me. I don't go that route. Other photographers do, and more power to them, but that's just not my thing.
A question, do painters out there, is there an equivalent to photoshopping, to post-production, to manipulation of your paintings that is really not part of the painting process? I'm not sure if I can explain that, and there might be a simple answer that no, because the painting is always a progression process. Does my question make any sense?
I know that there are beautiful digital artists where they compose, they make composites from various elements and turn it into wondrous pieces of art. And it's a talent all on its own. So I think that works that way. The traditional painters, I mean, I'm not one, but I have been involved with them for many, many years. I used to be in the gallery business and all that stuff. I think that if you're involved in giclée, perhaps, if you're involved in reproductions, perhaps, I'll leave it at that. Painters, speak up.
Maybe I could just chime in on it to answer your question. As far as my own experiences, no, I don't use any of that to paint. The painting process is strictly observing and making sketches and then trying to put it in color. Sometimes you would take a set of photographs of certain things just to kind of get you in a right frame of what is it that you're painting. But manipulation of the images really it's not important for painting purposes. The only time, Serge, like you say, it comes into the picture. Say I've done quite a bit of quite a bit of reproductions, and I had someone who was working with me, and interestingly enough, he was an amazing photographer, and he did family weddings and everything else. So we were working on actually converting the some of my paintings into the giclée prints, and it took him a long time to actually get the colors right. And and at one point we almost gave up. So finally, when he came back with the actual good set, that was really working well, he told me, said, Jules, the only reason it took me so long is because I'm colorblind, which to me was like, my God, how could you be a photographer being colorblind? But you just can't explain the talent that this person has. So it only would be in the post-production, say even putting things out on the internet to get a decent photographs, like I'm trying to do it myself with various success, So sometimes I take a photographs and you may just if it comes out too dark, it's not the best approach, of course, but sometimes I may just play a little bit with the post-production to kind of get the picture so it could be posted on the net, Other than that, no.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Jules. I have a question that is directed, if is that okay with you, to Barry. I'll contrast you with Rachel. Rachel, you told me that you've been an active painter for the last 56 years. So mazel tov on that.
Wow.
But Barry, you said that you only started painting 5 years ago. But you're obviously an accomplished artist. So how did that happen so quickly, Barry?
Sure, I guess I took a number of courses when I retired. I never really had time for art while I was working and raising a family and But I took a number of courses and things flowed from there. I took a number of studio programs with artists, and I learned from them. A number of artists were incredibly generous in terms of spending time with me and talking and exchanging ideas. And I think you probably have to have some inherent skills, I guess. But I developed, I focused on skills over the last 5 years, and I've also spent some period of time, involved in, I guess, what I call spontaneous creativity, where you sort of just sit down and throw paint on a canvas or on paper and see what comes out at the other end. But most of the time, I like to, I've spent time, sort of developing skills and painting things that require a lot of thought and a lot of detail, and probably painting over what doesn't appear right.
So Rachel, make sure you unmute yourself, Rachel. I can do it for you, I think. Yeah. No, you unmute yourself, Rachel. Can I do that? I think I did before. Yeah, there you go. So how do you, what do you attest your longevity, and how have you progressed in so many years that Barry has only had 5 years? Oh, you're not, you're unmuted, or you're muted rather, sorry. You should be okay now. No, we still can't hear you. You're not muted as far as I'm concerned. Well, it's something within your computer. So let me ask anyone else. You come back in whenever you feel that your audio is working, Rachel. If anyone else who's either a very new artist or someone who's been practicing art for decades, what's the difference between that experience and the ability to just to dive right in? Does anyone want to say anything about that? Just unmute yourself. And
I guess an added question might be, how has your art changed over the years that you've been doing it?
Very good point. Tzippi, go ahead.
Okay.
So Tzippi, you just have to unmute yourself. Oop, I just muted you again. Can you unmute yourself, Tzippi?
Oh, now, can you hear me?
Now you can. Oh, Rachel, we can. That was Rachel, right?
No, that's me.
Oh, that's you, Tzippi. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Actually, that was a wonderful question, because I find that from the age of 5, I loved art. And rather than stick with one art, I've done so many things. Every few years, something just appears and I do it. I love dance first. So I would dance until I was 18 or 19 years old. And then I came to Canada, and the first thing I did, and it was so funny, we were sitting in a car, and I was breastfeeding my baby, and my husband asked me, what would you like to do? And we were watching a movie. It's called I forget the name of it, but it was about police. So they go to a police, and one of the guys, when he leaves, he becomes a floral designer. And it just jumped into my brain. Okay, maybe that's what I could do. So the first, like from the age of 35 to 50, I was a floral designer. And I loved it very much. I worked in shops, I worked for myself. But then after 15 years, it was physically very hard. I said I have to leave because physically I can't handle it anymore. So we had to go to a wedding. Funny enough, we had to go there. And I looked for a dress and for a jewelry to wear. And I didn't find anything I liked. So my husband, Richard, said, Tzippi, you have good hands and good sense of color. Why don't you make one yourself? So I made a necklace. I wore it for a wedding. And then rather than just wear it one time, I wore it once when I went to the dentist. And the ladies there said, wow, what a beautiful necklace. Did you make it? And I said, yes. And I said, do you sell your necklaces? And I said, no, but I'm open to it. So the dentist said, you know what? I have a friend who has a store that everything there is on consignment. Would you like me to give you her name? And I said, sure, I'd love it. And that's how it all started. I started with hair, and then just people were coming to me and saying, oh, could you do something for my bride, and so on and so forth. And then I decided, well, I'll go into business. And I always went from to shops where I used to buy my clothes, and I always wore a piece. And I had a bag in my hand. And if somebody says, oh, where did you buy this necklace? I'd say, I made it. Would you like to see some more? And that's how it started. And I said, look, but 99% of people said no, but 1% said yes. And they said, you know what? I'll take your stuff on consignment. And that was 15 years ago. And it just grew and grew. I never made a full living out of it, but I worked full time, but money-wise only make part-time money. But the connection with the people, and now what's happening now with the COVID, I miss it terribly, because whenever I opened my box, I had one client. I would go to her every Friday, and she would call everybody and say, oh, Tzippi's here, come. She brought new jewelry. And come in, and I come in at 10 o'clock in the morning. I pretty much stay in the shop the whole day. People just kept grabbing things from my box before I put it out. And that's it. And then one day I went to the Jewish area, to the mall here in Toronto. Again, the same thing with the box in my hand. And I ended up in Brian Bailey's store, and I didn't even know who he was. And I came home and I said, Richard, somebody in the mall wanted my jewelry. And Richard said, who is it? And I said, Brian Bailey. Who is he? And Richard said, Tzippi, Brian Bailey is a guy that you liked from Project Runway on the television. And now I've been with him now for 15 years. So all my work is on consignment. And every time I put jewelry on any woman, they just, you know, they light up. They're so happy. And I happen to have really good sense of color. If I have any talent, is sense of color. And I walk into the store, I look from right all around the store. By the time I come back to the end of the store, I know what to make for each dress. And the joy that I'm missing right now, it's the connection with the people. Women love jewelry. And when I put a piece on their necklace, on their neck, with the dresses they're wearing, it's, for me, it's a mechaye. It's
So
pure
it's a
joy.
long.
And just to mention that one of the offshoots of planning an art show is that I am wearing a Fortuné pendant and a Sippy necklace. So that's what happens when you help artists plan art shows. You end up with stuff.
Yeah.
No,
The
it's
joy,
a
I tell
it's a
you.
long it's a long slog to develop that whole relationship, and you brought it around to what we started talking about right near the beginning of artists missing those connections because of COVID.
Yes.
So thank you for pointing out that you're wearing a Fortuné piece and a Zippy piece. So I'm going to ask Fortuné that a very common occurrence is for artists to be asked, "Oh, wow, that's fantastic. How long did it take to make that?" Whether it's a painting or a piece of jewelry or what have you. So I know that Fortuné does have a typical response, but perhaps you could expand on that. Oh, hang on, you're not unmuted. Um, I'll come and unmute her, or you come here, Fortuné. That's the advantage of living in the same house. Come around.
Okay, well, when it comes to creating jewelry, it's definitely within a time frame. You know, 2 hours, 3 hours. Mine go into the kiln, and sometimes they have to go in 2 or 3 times into a kiln, and each kiln is at least 8, 10, 12 hours. So it could take a long time to produce one little piece of jewelry, but it's manageable. So you can give an answer. But with a painting, it's totally different. I often, well, almost always work on several paintings at a time. I have, 3 easels set up, and I work on one for, the whole day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever, and then I switch to the other one, and I switch to the third one. That's just the way my brain works. I prefer to not focus too hard on any one painting, because what happens sometimes then is that you focus too much on the details. So for me, it's better to work on a piece, switch over to another one, switch over to a third one, and then maybe even switch into jewelry before I finish any one painting. It's for me, that's the way my brain works best. And then I find that when I come back to that original piece, I see it with different eyes. And that sort of opens my eyes to where the problems are, where I need to fix things, where I need to adjust, where I need to perhaps change colors, change a line, change a shape. So it's not about, precision, realistic imagery that I'm concerned with. It's about the feeling, the feeling of that piece. It's much more intuitive. So it's often a question answer kind of response kind of thing with my paintings. So, if you ask me how long did it take, I can never tell. It can be a week, or it can be 2 days. Sometimes it's little increments that add up to a long period of time. Generally, it sort of also depends on the size of the painting, of course, whether it's a little or a 4x8 painting. I guess that's just the way I work.
Your computer works now.
Okay, my computer works. I'm going.
Thank you very much. I don't know, when I was in transit from one room to another, I don't know if she gave the two-word answer, which was a lifetime, of how long it took to create that piece. Because I think all of you artists will probably agree that it's not just, from the moment you touch the first piece of paint to the canvas, but it's when you started your life and when you started learning about life and learning about art, and for the last number of decades. That's how long it took to create that piece. And people, the viewers, don't, they have a hard time appreciating that. You know, Serge can attest to this, for the photographer, how long did it take for you to do that? Well, about an eighth of a second is how long the shutter was open for. But that is a very, very far from the actual crux of the matter. So it's a very common question, sort of unfortunately, but then it's very educational for the public to realize what artists go through to produce their artwork. Sorry, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
So I'm formally trained. I went to art school, and they teach you to draw and start from the bottom. You learn to draw the human figure from the inside out. You do still lifes, you do portraiture, et cetera, et cetera. And before you graduate, they then tell you, sure, now that you've proven yourself, you can create and do what you want to do. I'm an abstract artist, but I've been formally trained. And when somebody turns to me and says, oh, well, how long did that take you? Because they think they or their child or, their cousin could paint it too. That is my standard answer, a lifetime. Because I spent a lifetime, picking fabric colors and looking at paint colors and seeing different textures and applying all those things in life, whether it was even cooking, and bring it home to what it is that I'm creating at the end of the day. So that answer, a lifetime, is so true.
Thank you, Cheryl. That's the end of the formal questions that I have. I want to make sure to mention that we always appreciate your comments, especially from those amongst you who are not one of our artists, although I'm very proud to say that 16 out of the 19 artists that we have in this show are or were present for this panel discussion. So that's very, very gratifying. But I do encourage you to comment on this panel discussion or any other part of of this art show, which, as Laurie said, goes on for a full year, on the comments area on the website. So just find it wherever it is, and please feel free to make comments whenever you wish. You can make one today, or you can make one in 6 months. The website will be up for a full year, as I said. I don't want to cut this off unless, or if people have other comments that they would like to make, or please feel free to leave at any time, of course. But if there are any other comments that people want to make, please unmute yourself and do so now.
I'd like to ask Caroline where she gets the inspiration for her designs.
I'm very interested in cross-cultural patterns. I'm very interested in the fact that there was a move because trade routes were opening up during Victorian England, that the patterns from Syria and patterns from Japan before that traveled across so much land and so many sensibilities to arrive in England. I'm interested in that. I'm interested how they were changed. I'm interested how the British adopted that and adapted that, and how they changed it because of their own cultural sensibilities. And I'm interested in pattern as language. I believe pattern is a language, and I believe there's dialects in that language, and I believe that it's all discernible. I'm interested in how color works with pattern. I'm interested in memory and pattern. So that's what I try to use in my glass work and the fabric stuff I do, and it's just all fascinating, and it's a very maybe just as intimate a relationship that people have with language, I think people have with pattern and color. Thanks for the question.
Thanks for the answer, Caroline. Anyone else have anything to add? Tippy, go ahead.
Caroline, I'd like to ask you a question as well. Those patterns, do you print them on clothes sometimes? On clothes, like to use pattern, to do a jacket print or something like that? Because it's a very big field right now of especially now that we are on the internet more than we see people. I just saw on Facebook inviting artists to make patterns, to send their patterns to print on whatever piece of clothing that they want, to make children's clothes or women's clothes. Are you interested in something like that?
It's a great concept, and yes, I would be interested in that. I haven't done anything like that. I've just done the scarves, but that would be fascinating. That's a whole different set of problems. Like, I think that's something else. That's art is a very interesting kind of problem. Whatever discipline you're in, whatever medium you use, so much of it is solving problems, and solving problems with an aesthetic, in an aesthetic way. And so I imagine putting pattern on clothing would present me with a whole new thing where, well, the sleeve is going to be here and this draping is going to be here.
Right.
How is
especially when you can do it on the internet. You can't do it, you can't have people come to your computer, but you can send it to them. So go on Facebook and check it out, and I wish you good luck with it. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you so much. I will look into it. I will.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I think we are at a moment, as the Consul General has said, where there are ongoing changes. There are ongoing discussions.
Okay, I'm going to go.
That will, in fact, lead to greater stability and more regulation.
Okay.
I don't know who was talking there, but is there anything else, or should we call it a day?
I think a lot of people have left the site at this point, so we might want to call it a day. But the interesting thing is, since we've recorded this discussion, people visiting the site all during the year will be able to hear this panel discussion and get to know the artists a bit if they haven't seen it today. So that's a really good thing. And we can consider during the year having another panel discussion if people think it's a great idea. So let us know what you think.
Great, thank you, Lori. Don't expect that this will be on the website in the next few minutes. I have to figure out how to send it to Damon, our wonderful sponsor, and then he will post it on the website. So I have no idea if that'll be tonight or in a day or two or whatever. So if you want to replay it, or you'll be able to fast forward. So just keep checking back. Fortunately.
I just have one more comment. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I've really enjoyed doing this. Thank you for participating. Thank you so much. I've always felt it was important for artists to communicate, to speak amongst each other, and that's how ideas can spring up, and it's nice to share methods and ideas. I'm wondering if anybody would be interested in continuing this kind of thing on an informal session, sort of a Zoom in, but just amongst us, not with the public necessarily, but just us. Is anyone, if you are, maybe let Lori or Bill or myself, let one of us know, and we can certainly do this, especially now with COVID, where we can't, talk to other people too much. It's nice to have a community of our own here.
That's a great idea. Another suggestion is, excuse me, if you go to an email that I sent to you and do a reply all, and then type in your message saying, yeah, I'd like to participate in, as Fortuné said, some kind of a group get-together virtually, then that message will then go to everybody, and then we can deal with it at that time. So that's another way. Or, as Fortuné suggested, get a hold of Lori, and I'll have her email address, and do it that way. We only need 2 people to want to participate. 3 is better, 10 is better, and so on. Thank you. Thank you again, everyone. It's been wonderful.
Nice meeting you all.
See you all, and to meet you all, other than your faces. Now we can, or
Thank you.
your faces in a photograph. Now we can see you
Thanks a lot for the organizers.
up live. You're very
Thank you
welcome.
very
As I
much.
said, the team effort.
Well done.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.